hello there. And today we are excited because we have a very special guest, Master Grief Coach and Educator herself, Miami Nice.
Hi, JoAnn. Thank you so much for allowing me to come on to your podcast. I'm so excited for your journey with this. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. We are delighted to have you. So we thought it was so fitting to have you because today our topic is expected versus unexpected loss. Miami, because of the season we're in,
Mhm.
I thought it would be beneficial to have this conversation, especially since we've had so many meaningful conversations offline.
Yes.
I wanted to give people a sneak peek into your genius. I've had the experience of walking with you and being a part of your genius for years. And most recently, I've watched you take a traumatic loss and use it as a vehicle to serve. I want us to just dive right in. Tell us a little bit about how you became a grief coach.
Well, along my journey after losing my father, my sister, and then my son, and they were all traumatic deaths. Um, and I just needed something that was larger than I was at the time in my mindset. I was like, I'm searching for something that is outside of me that I wasn't there yet, but I needed some tools in order to be able to do that. And so along the journey, which maybe like the fifth or fourth thing that I had done, was researching and looking for what could support me. And while I was doing that, I came across this trainer that was providing online services of how to become a coach, but not only a coach, a grief coach, which was something I definitely needed to help me through the process. And prior to I had did a lot of other work prior to that, which was first deciding, and that's my journey with you helping me understanding my worth and what all I needed to become whole, even prior to me even knowing that I'm having these feelings that I wasn't because of the loss of my son tragically. Just 2 days after you and I was having one of JoAnn's um, amazing sessions on, and she was my life coach at the time, and inspire me of what to do to start my own business. And 2 days later, I had received this phone call um, that Tyke had been missing, and of course, just being afraid of not knowing how to move through that life that didn't know existed. Um, Grief coaching kind of supported me into moving through that process and helping me define my purpose of what I'm doing now.
I have
Awesome.
been seeing you. I have been seeing your podcast, and they all have been amazing. And just listening to the stories and the journeys of other people that have just come alongside you, I am just a proud friend.
Oh,
I'm
thank you
a
so
proud
much.
friend as I watch you transform and use the gifts that are within you to serve others. I know that you published a book, a little bit about your book and what purpose you wanted to serve.
Well, the key process, because I named it after my son, his name was Tyke. The key process, it's a grief guide to mastering spiritual healing. And I just wanted my side of the story so people could understand my truth, because outside of losing my son and my father and my sister, there was still some other background stuff that people just didn't know about me, work, other children, other relationships that I had. And I just wanted to make sure that people knew all of that and what kind of got me through that process. So I developed these seven, I call them the 7 key grief guide of the things that kind of, supported me in that. And I just wanted people to understand what that looked like for me. And it was actually me finding meditation first. That was the first step, meditation, and being prayerfully mindful and what that looked like. And the rest of the keys, of course, that are inside the book. But I developed that just because I wanted a resource for people to be able to go to learn all the things and the steps that helped me along my journey.
So what would you say to another mother who is grieving right now?
I would just say take your time in this process, that this is an experience that you've never had. So time is definitely of the essence during this period. um, Getting to know who you are is going to be very, very important because you didn't know a life outside of your child, or any loss that you've had. So give yourself enough time to work through the process and what best works for you. There's no, timeline, and because grief is nonlinear. So, and it doesn't happen in these waves. I know that there's the stages that are out there, but it doesn't happen like that for everyone. So just take your time in figuring out what emotions that you're having. Speak to that emotion, feel the emotion. Don't, not grieve. Don't be not sad. You should be sad if you've lost someone, so that's normal. And whatever feeling, just take a mental note and journal a lot, which is good. That kind of helped me with the process of writing the key process. But do those things that are going to be best for you at this time, and definitely self-care.
Such great information to support those that are going through loss, especially in this time where we're all sheltered in, and it feels like we're dealing with this invisible
Yeah.
thing that's taking so many lives. In Miami, is it not only taking lives, but people are in isolation? What would you say to that person that's feeling isolated right now? Kind of how to work their way through where they are right now, feeling alone.
Yeah. Thank you for that question. That's a great question. Social isolation is definitely something that it takes some time getting used to. We didn't even realize that this was going to be a time that we're in, and not discover that being or having this cabin fever, as they call it, would be an issue for us, and that it would bring up some things that we didn't realize about ourselves that we needed to work on. But whatever comes up for you, if it's anger, if it's the awareness of, I haven't been with myself for some time, so let me get to re-engage with her and get to know who she is again. So do those things. One thing that I really wanted to talk about, which is love and belonging, and that's on the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, as just being an individual. That portion of it being number three, because of course first is self-actualization, and then esteem, but that third piece of it is love and belonging. And when we don't feel that we have that, and the thing that we could have loved, not necessarily that you don't have love in your household, but you loved going to work. You loved, if you were an event planner, for instance, you loved planning events. You loved driving into work. Some people could have. You loved your coworkers, or you loved your clients. And not being able to do those things right now can be very, very difficult, because we're just in a shift now. And as JoAnn and I spoke earlier, it's really a time to kind of get into who you really are again, and figure what that looks out like for you. Um, as we know it, we may go back, and of course, at some point in time, we will be able to get back out and do the things that we used to do. But at the same time, this is kind of learning and are teaching us and guiding us into the world will look different for us now. So to accept that, which is a grieving process, this whole social isolation, being home, not knowing if your loved ones are okay, not being able to even visit your loved one in the hospital right now, that has to be devastating for families, I know. But it's a grieving process even for us, which will, it's first all this denial, and then of course we've been angry because we don't have answers, or there's not tests available. And then there's going to be this bargaining. Oh, I should have saw my grandmother 2 weeks ago before she got sick, or I should have saw my or talked to my best friend more. When really, to be honest with you, they're even taking their cell phones away when they're in the hospital. So they're really not having any type of engagement. The patients aren't right now. especially if they're in ICU. So can you imagine what that looks like for the individual that's actually going through, that's having the sickness or the illness, with dealing with coronavirus right now? And but at some point, after the depression weighs away, because we will be in that period too, and a lot of us is experiencing that, which is normal, being this way now, acceptance will come. It will come, and it doesn't all happen in that order, but all of those stages will happen, but we have to be open to it.
Wow, looking at how you've dealt with unexpected loss and all the tools you've acquired, and just being able to share that with other people, I kind of want to shift a little bit. And so my experience was a little different in the sense that grandmother was almost 90 years old. And I always say one of the things that she gave me was the gift of instructions,
Yes.
that she prepared me for her end. And as difficult as it was to have those conversations, I'm glad she was a woman of wisdom and saw fit to weave those moments in every time we talked. And so, remember going home, a friend of mine was having a birthday and she wanted to attend the Essence Fest. And as I visited my grandmother to say our goodbyes, like we typically do, she said, come on. You know, she always got to give me something to take with me. She said, I want to show you something. So I'm going in the other room to see what new outfit she bought, what new hat, because that was
Yeah.
one of the things we shared. We both like fashion. I got it from her. And she would always joke and say, girl, look, when I go, you better have me together or else, you know? So we go in the room and she pulls this item off the rack and it's in a plastic bag. And she opens it, Miami, and she said, this is the outfit. And I was like, oh my God, it's beautiful. And then it hit me. This is
Here's
the
the outfit.
outfit.
The outfit. Mm.
And I fought back the tears in that moment. And so she softened the blow with shifting to another rack of clothes. And she said, you know, pick one. I can't fit this stuff anymore. Pick one. So I remember picking this black and white maxi dress.
Mm.
That I took with me. And the next time I visited her, of course, I had it altered because she was taller than me. And I wore it, and she was like, "Oh my God!" Like she didn't even remember that was the item. But in that moment, I remember riding back to Atlanta with my friends in reflective mode, and I was thinking, I said, "Wow, I wonder what she's thinking. I'm
Mm.
wondering what she's feeling."
Yeah.
I'm wondering, you know, does she have any regrets? Is there something she still wants to do? I was wondering what that process felt like for her. For me, I was thinking, well, how many more conversations will I get to have with her?
Mm.
How many more times will I get to visit her? But I was really grateful that every time thereafter, when I spoke with her, she gave me a little bit more instruction. I remember when she called and we chatted, and then I said, okay, I'm gonna make a trip home. When I got home, she handed me this envelope, and there were all these pieces of papers with her, and she said, now I may have repeated myself, but you'll figure it out. And so she had literally written everybody she wanted to speak,
Yeah.
everything I needed to know about. She said, I know you're going to put it together. And so I was able to put together her program, put
Right.
together her obituary based on the information that she gave me.
Yeah.
And while it was really challenging to do that, it gave us time together, Miami.
Mm-hmm.
It gave us that time together. And I got to feel her and know her through those little notes that she wrote. And I think was intentional on her part, because there was some words that she had never spoken, but I got a glimpse of more depth as to
Yeah.
who she was. Like in that moment, I saw her not just as my grandmother, but I saw her as this woman.
Right.
And so I say all that to say, and I know, you know, I'm parking here a little while, but I
Oh.
say that to say the best thing you can do for your loved ones is leave them with clear instruction, because it gives them a vision
Mhm.
of what you want your end to look like. When your loved one transitions, you're in a totally different place emotionally. But
Mhm.
if you have written instructions,
Right.
you can follow the instructions and find peace in knowing that these are the decisions I'm making around what they've asked me. And
Mhm.
I get to honor them by fulfilling the instructions that they've given me. And you walk away with this personal sense of satisfaction, knowing that you help keep the peace and the purpose of their life,
Mhm.
even as they transitioned.
Right. And I think what's also important too there, it 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 takes down the going back and forth with family members because it's you're honoring,
Absolutely.
like you said, you're honoring her wishes because you know how family can be during those difficult times. And without the instruction, then everybody has their own input or output of what it should look like when actually half of the time that's not even what the deceased wanted. But then there's all this stress built around it with the family. So kudos to grandma. Thank you.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. In my book, I wrote about some of the challenges,
Okay.
I
Mhm.
faced.
Yeah.
And that was the one thing that I could say, when everybody was putting in their 2 cents, I said, this is what she wanted. I'm
Absolutely.
honoring what she wanted, even as it related to the role that each one of her children played. Like my grandmother had 6 children, they're all living, but she chose me
Hmm.
to carry out her last wishes.
But she's always put you in that position, kind of. Anyway, you've always been a planner. You know what I'm saying? Just
Mhm.
you've always been a coach. You've always been a planner, but that just really came from her spirit anyway. That
Yeah.
was, implemented into you over the years.
Mhm.
So I mean, it was a perfect fit. She knew what she wanted, and what she did, she knew what she was
One
doing.
of the things that I was concerned about as I watched her journey to the end was my grandmother represented home for me.
Hmm.
And once she was gone, my concern was who was going to hold that space, because her home was the hub. It was where all the celebrations took place. It was where all the memories were created. And she loved planning and she loved celebrating and she loved having family around her.
Hmm.
And it's sad to say that nobody is holding that space
Hmm.
now. One of the reasons why, I love following you is that having conversations with you is that, you always give me some nugget,
Oh,
to help me move along. And that process is finding a way to adjust
yeah.
to the new normal, to not having her to hold that space. Anything that's coming up for you right now as it relates to when the matriarch is no longer there, to how to move beyond that space?
What comes up for me is the meditation, um, because that's really what started me to focus and to be able to self um, actualize my emotions and feelings and being able to just sit still and know, as the word says. So for me, meditation was a big part of my journey because I needed to sit with myself to acknowledge all of the things that I didn't know that I didn't like about myself, um, to want to create change in the things that I wanted to change. How could I be a better mom since I was feeling guilty about being a mom? How can I be a better wife? Because meditation for me was a source. It was a source that I could feel connected with something that was even higher and bigger than I was. And since I didn't know what my life was going to look like without my son anymore, I needed to connect again with my higher self, become more aware of being able to hear from spirit and what I needed. What did my soul desire every day is one of the questions that I often ask. I do that because I need to hear and know sometimes because I just don't know. Um, you know, grief is traumatizing. And therefore, since it's traumatizing, it can hit you at any point. I could be traumatizing, but just by, I could, be triggered, excuse me, just by having this conversation with you, if I was not full of knowing who I am now in this space that I'm in now. I've come a long way from, um, having the not having the opportunity to visit the things that hurt. That's the one thing we must do. You got to sit with those feelings and those emotions that are kind of scary to deal with. So meditation for me was the biggest thing.
Hmm. Thank you for that. Listen to us, guys. Be still, sit still. It may be a challenge, but just find a place in your house, where you can carve out some space. When you go to this space, I'm going to this space because, I want to spend some time being quiet. I want to spend some time listening to
Yeah.
what comes up for me
Yeah.
and to get some direction about what I need to focus on.
Yeah, because
Um,
a lot of times people, they say, well, I pray, but that's different than meditating on God's word, which He wants us to do both. Yes, He wants us to humble ourselves and pray. Of course, He does, but He also wants us to sit still and know. Because if you're constantly asking and talking to Him, how are you going to be receiving what He's saying? So that's where the meditation comes in for us to sit and know, because you'll be able to hear from spirit. You don't even have to be in actual prayer mode to be able to hear from God, because we all hear that have that inner voice that we hear sometimes, and a lot of time that could be our gut feeling, of us telling us not to do something, to do something. We all have that ability to be able to access that, that channel with our higher self. But it's a matter of, just like everything else, being conditioned to be able to do, which is sitting down. And like right now, we're in a time that we're being forced to do that. And so I would take, if anyone that's out there that's just dealing with everything, well, it's to be honest with you, it's all of us. We're all dealing with something at this point. So I would just, my recommendation and the tool for you to use is, like JoAnn said, carve out some space, or wherever it is. JoAnn has an amazing throne room. I have my prayer room. It just depends on what you want that to look like. Create that space for yourself, sit still, and be okay with whatever comes up, and adjust yourself when they come up. If you feel like you can't handle that, just take some time with it and sit with it and be like, okay, I'm angry about something. And if I am angry about it, let me just work through the anger by acknowledging it first. That's the first thing you could do. Acknowledge that you're angry about it. Now, what is the affirmation that I can say that's the opposite of me being angry? And see yourself being happy. I don't have to be angry. That's a choice that you're making. Do the opposite. I can smile. I can smile because I'm still here. So those are some of the things that I do.
so, as we close, I want to talk about just a few tips for moving forward.
Get to know why you are here. We're all here for a reason. And spending some time with yourself and getting to know all these things about you really will reveal and define your purpose of why you're here. My road of my journey didn't quite look like the normal or typical journey of someone's grieving, because um, there was so much inner spiritual work that I had to do. That's why my book is called A Grief Guide to Mastering the Spiritual Healing Process. So important when grieving, to just really sit and meditate and learn and be mindful and discover those parts of you that you didn't even know exist, and then they will turn into this beautiful
Last thing
things.
I want to ask you is, so what is your favorite scripture or quote?
It's something that I wrote, and it's understanding grief and ways to heal awakens the spiritual self. And that was so true for me. It was just me realizing that in order for me to get to know and acknowledge who I am, I had to first acknowledge that I'm a spiritual being here having a human experience.
Mm-hmm.
And by that, what does that look like for me? And to sum it up, I created that quote. But yes, definitely understanding grief and learning ways to heal was great. It was so good for me to acknowledge that and to get some self-actualization of about who I was and how to move forward.
Thank you. I really appreciate you. And I know that what you shared today would definitely help the lives of others. Thank you.
Thank
Take
you so
care.
much, Joy, for having